instead of Ashley and Mary Kate, for Michelle, as a 3-year-old kid, they gave me a doll to talk to for rehearsal. A rubber doll, not even plastic, like a test dummy. It looked like a porn doll. It was just missing the stuff.
Sure.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 9 of the Pseudo Nerd Podcast for March 4th, 2016. I'm your podcast host, Josh Kiser, and joining me today, just Kyle Hoagland.
I'm sorry. I didn't sound too enthusiastic.
When I say just Kyle Hoagland, I don't mean like just Kyle Hoagland. I just mean
wah.
Kyle Hoagland. Because Haddix is off celebrating his honeymoon again or something.
He's on assignment in where? Fort Myers?
Yeah, he took his talents to South Beach. So.
Oh, classic Haddix, right? It's the guy who calls shit about how I was being a homer for the Warriors. Then he goes down to Fort Myers, trying not to be white.
That's what he does best, I think.
It's probably the pastiest Puerto Rican I know.
Maybe he'll come back with a little bit of a tank, and hopefully a little more seriousness. Because without him here, it's gonna be a much more serious podcast without all the giggling taking place.
Yeah, he really needs to get his shit together. We're all here to have fun, but there's a level of professionalism that I feel like maybe he can find some down in Florida.
We can only hope. LeBron came back a better man, so maybe Haddix will too.
Here's how sad my life is. I've been listening to Cleveland sports radio in California, and man, you guys are really tearing it, like laying it into LeBron. I understand that you guys had a couple losses and he took a day off, but Jesus Christ, leave that guy alone. He's like the one thing that's happening okay on that team.
They got to criticize somewhere, so.
There's plenty of places.
It's easy to criticize LeBron.
I guess so. I guess he's like the, whatever you call it, the whipping boy.
Right. Yeah. It's in some way he takes that upon himself too. This is my team, and some of the stories that come out about him. He's there to. When things are going good, it's on him. And when things are going bad, it's got to be on him, too. He's like the quarterback of the team.
That's true. And then what we're getting around this is Haddix, you can get your shit together, man.
Right, exactly.
But before we go 30 minutes on LeBron and the Cavs, basically, Haddix, we hope you're enjoying your vacation. Enjoy listening to this as a fan, because he personally did not want to be a part of the process that we go through, the many days of creating talking points and the rundown and putting a bunch of push pins on a bunch of important things that we're going to be discussing.
Right.
He wanted no part of that.
It's like if you ever see in movies and stuff when they're like a bunch of people are sitting around like a big office conference table. And they're like throwing out writers, throwing out ideas and stuff like that. That's pretty much what we do day in and day out for hours upon hours to the late wee hours of the night, trying to come up with a good show for all you fans out there, all you PNPers out there.
Yeah, I think it's like a combination of like business meeting meets CSI show meets Eyes Wide Shut party. That's pretty much how our rundowns go.
Absolutely, and Haddix wanted no part of it. So, we'll see how it is. I don't want to say anything, but honestly, I think it's, when that one guy left Backstreet Boys and nobody noticed, I think that's how it's going to be.
Shots fired. This is going to create a social media firestorm with the Josh Haddix fans, and we know that they come in droves.
That's right. And for those of you who want to let us know how we do today without Josh Haddix, feel free to give us a shout out on Twitter at Pseudo Nerd Pod, or leave us a comment on Facebook, or maybe when you're leaving that 5-star review when you're subscribed to us on the iTunes Music Store, you could let us know how things are there. Or, Haddix is one of our, probably runs the Instagram account, so feel free to leave comments on there as well.
Hey, he'll probably actually pay attention to that while he's on his little vacay. Right. Yeah, that's his one job he needed to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
I personally don't do much Instagram, but for all you kids out there, I was told it was pretty good. And speaking of kids, sort of. So, Kiser, you fancy yourself a gamer, right? Or would you say that maybe not so much now that you're a little older, but I'm sure that passion, that burning desire is still there.
I enjoy a good video game, yes.
So, I got into conversation with somebody at work today about this topic, and I went on and told them about RPG-a-thon. And for those of you who've never heard of RPG-a-thon, it's now I think an 18-year-old tradition where Kiser and myself and our friend Matt basically hole ourselves into one room, and we play video games for 5 days straight between the Christmas and New Year's kind of gap after Christmas. So I told them about this, and they were like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Like, I wish I had thought of that. And then they got on the topic about Minecraft, which, by the way, a good game. I personally have never played it. I've seen people play it. It seems like fun. And they asked me about what my opinion about Minecraft was, or like we should do a podcast about Minecraft. And I said, well, joke's on you. I don't think any of us have ever even touched the game.
That's true. Other than a couple of, like, pictures I've seen where people have built something cool that, like, represents a major city or something like that. I couldn't even, if you loaded it up right now, I'd have no idea what I was doing in it.
Exactly. And so as soon as I told them that, because they also know about the podcast, and they're like, yeah, you should do a Minecraft podcast. I'm like, well, that would probably be pretty shitty considering that we've never played it. And the look on this 20-something, and by 20-something, like 22-year-old's face, it was as if I am like an old fogey. Like, he literally like looked at it like I was disqualified from being a gamer. Oh, good one, dude. Nice. But
even without Haddix here, I'm still bringing the joke strong.
Yeah, I know. We're not immune to it. I won't be immune to it. But like, I'm the kind of guy that I've never really played a Call of Duty. I've never played Minecraft. I never really, like I said, I don't think I've really gotten to the games. I think they've really taken a kind of like a life of its own, probably maybe the past like 6 or 7 years, other than Warcraft. It was just really nuts how blown away he was that I just seemed like he didn't think of me as like a gamer. He saw me as like, oh, you got your Atari, in your garage somewhere. You're going to pull that out. Like, almost like the anti-hipster, like where the old stuff isn't cool. I don't know, man. It was a really weird conversation to have with the guy. And, with that said, I started playing Minecraft yesterday with my wife. It's actually a really fun game. It's real confusing if you've never played it before.
I can imagine it would take some time getting used to it, but I mean, it's a very popular game. I think people of all ages have played it, but it's definitely, I think, the millennials game. I think we're sort of just outside of that range of where it became, mainstream popular, but I still think it's something that can be beloved by all ages, which, we could be talking about Minecraft, or we could be talking about Full House, which is the concept of today's podcast, where it was, in fact, loved by all ages. And whether you were a little kid, you were an adolescent, you were an adult, it was a family-friendly show for all ages.
I agree. It was also a time in our lives where, as good as Full House was, I mean, there was no shortage of corny family laugh track sitcoms. So you had your pick of the litter of, back in the day of like TGIF and probably what else? I feel like there was another block, not on ABC, maybe on Fox. Like we're like Step by Step on ABC. I don't think it was. I think that was more of like a Fox show.
I think it was ABC.
Was it ABC? But I mean, like you went from your Growing Pains to your Family Matters to Full House to whatever the show after Full House that had the Olsen twins. Like there was just a ton of shows. Like there was no shortage of it, and it's really a lost art because other than Fuller House that just came out that we're going to be talking about, there's not really a You got the Goldbergs maybe, and like the one Korean show where there's a family and Blackish, but that they're totally different. Like they're not the same type of vibe.
Well, and I think that just the television in general has changed since the 90s. But as you said, today's podcast is going to be Full House. We're gonna talk Full House. To your point, the Fuller House has just released on Netflix. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about Full House. We're going to try to do our best not to spoil much from Fuller House. Just talk about the general ideas and characters and things like that, because it is so fresh and new. But just kind of we're going to go down that path and that nostalgia and relive just the Full House and what it meant to us and what it really means to America. Because it was a cultural phenomena in its own way in the 90s.
Yeah, and also when we talk about like trying not to spoil things, it's not like Full House or Fuller House now because it's so new. It's not like like Lost or Breaking Bad or Dexter, where like, my God, there's gonna be some plot twists and crazy things. I feel like we can discuss it kind of openly, because it's hard to talk about some of the characters without kind of giving a little bit of like why they're there, what's their importance, like what's their
sure.
Like, I mean, because we'll talk about love interest and we'll talk about omissions, obviously, that like some of the cast is not there. But yeah, we'll do what we can to obviously not give too much away. But there's gonna be a lot of information that we're kind of, as we're reviewing the show, just kind of make sure that the listeners understand that we may drop a couple nuggets where it's not going to ruin the show, but it's definitely going to put the characters in light maybe before you actually see the show.
Yeah, that's fair. But before we get to Fuller House, let's talk Full House itself, the original show. Do you remember? I couldn't tell you exactly what age I was when I started watching it. I mean, the show came out in '87. I was 2 at the time. I can tell you I wasn't watching it then, but it hits TGIF at some point. It might have even been when it came out in '87. It might not have been a couple of years into it. I read somewhere season 4 when it hit TGIF, so maybe it was '91, and maybe then I started watching it. But what was it that drew you into that show?
Well, I think what drew me into it was when you're that young, you're not really watching a whole lot of TV by yourself, and so your parents are trying to find something that you'll like, but at the same time, they're not going to stab their eyeballs out. There's a lot of shows now where, and this is just me from being an uncle and having a lot of nieces and nephews and a younger age, and there's a lot of shows that are definitely catered to children and only children, or children and their parents. There's a big difference to me between having a family where it's like adults and kids alike can enjoy, and then shows that are definitely centered around like an educational, child theme, like a Bubble Guppies, or even if I go back even further, like a Blue's Clues. That's definitely more kid centric. So Full House was good because I felt like it was something that you had the kids that were going through all of their, all their turmoil and their funny quirkinesses as being kids. And then you've got, the adults side, their story. And you've got like, the male mom of, Danny Tanner. And then you've got like the ladies' man of Uncle Jesse. So you've got, and the silly comedian of Joey. So you've got a bunch of, everyone had like a real unique,
everybody had their own personality.
Contribution. Yeah, they each contributed in their own unique way to the show, including the kids and including Michelle when she was old enough to actually talk and have lines. So I like the show because it was one of the few shows that I think like everybody could have sat down and actually like legitimately enjoyed watching. It was also because of TGIF. It was during a time where my dad was a football coach, and I wasn't really old enough yet to really start going to going to the games. And so I was at home with a babysitter, and so I'd be watching TV on a Friday night, and TGIF was it. Yeah, so it was Full House was front and center.
It was, Snick at Night or whatever, but that was Saturday
Snick
nights. But
yeah, Saturday night was Snick and TGIF was Friday. So there was plenty of children's TV back in the 90s. Man, they really wanted to keep you indoors on Friday and Saturday evenings.
And I was all good for it. I stayed indoors and watched those shows. But who is your favorite character on the original Full House?
The original Full House. You know what? That's one of the shows where I really didn't really have a favorite. Like, if I go and look at other ones, like, obviously, like, I really like Steve Urkel in, like, Family Matters or something like that, like, where, like, an iconic really stands out. I don't feel like no one really stood out in Full House other than, you know what? I actually really like Steve. And I think the reason why, because he was funny to me.
Food.
Yeah, he's always just like walking into the house like, hey, Tanner, how's it going? He goes straight to the fridge and just starts like making like a Scooby-Doo size sandwich. And like that was just comical because no one makes sandwiches that are like 2 feet tall, and this guy's like just piling up stuff and no one seems to care.
It was like Steve being Steve. I mean, to your point, everybody had their own personality on the show. And you get somebody like, Bob Saget plays Danny Tanner. And, Danny Tanner on that show he's a widowed father of 3 girls. He is Mr. Clean. He's always, the jokes all the time are, he's almost like OCD when it comes to how he cleans things and how he rotates this. And, it's, the third Tuesday of the month, I'm rotating couch cushions this day. And then, it's, this Wednesday, I always, run laundry on this day, that kind of thing. And at the time, you just think it's funny, like that's Danny. But, and I think it was because social media wasn't a big deal yet, things like that. If you didn't know comedians at the time, you didn't know Bob Saget, that guy was the complete opposite in every way in real life as opposed to his on-air persona.
It kind of makes you wonder how he got the job. It would be like in today's world if you got like I can't even think of anything right now. Like Louis C.K., who has a show, obviously very dark, comedy on FX. But consider put Louis C.K. As Danny Tanner, or even like if George Carlin was like a grandpa and had the same thing. Like, there'd be like a dark comedian like that who then takes on like this, male motherly figure.
Right, and Bob Saget wasn't originally cast for Danny Tanner. And if you ever watch the unaired pilot, and I think you can like YouTube it, John Posey is actually Danny Tanner, and then got kicked out, and they brought Bob Saget in for the legitimate pilot. And if you're asking who John Posey is,
yeah, I'm typing it right now.
He's if you go to his IMDb page, he's best known for RoboCop 3, so he's got that going for him. But he's actually in the currently Teen Wolf television show, as he was in the show How to Get Away with Murder. And he's been in bits parts through his career previous to that. So he's been in other things. But
he was also in a movie. He was also in Legendary, starring John Cena.
So
and
that
Danny Glover. So I mean, right there, that exudes greatness.
So yeah, I mean, how he got it over him, I don't know. And then that's Bob Saget was also doing America's Funniest Home Videos and all that. Like, he was all over the place. And
he was primetime ABC. I mean, that both of those shows were on
and
ABC.
for like families, not and he was probably the last guy your parents would want sitting in a sitting around the couch talking to you as a kid, if it was just outside of the world of ABC.
Do you think it was that easy? Like, if they decided they didn't go with John Posey and they just like went down to like Studio 2 and went to like, oh, hey, Bob, good job with America's Home Videos. Say, what are you up to? And they're like, oh, not much. Well, I like to be on the show.
The America's Funniest Home Videos came afterwards.
Was it? I thought they were both around the same time. Or I thought that was like 80. I thought it was like the year before. You gonna Google that? To Google.
Yeah, I'll check that out while we're talking here. But I always assumed that show started out afterwards as a result of that. Bob Saget started that in '89. So yeah, it was a couple years after Full House. So he must.
Okay, so for one reason, I thought America's Home Videos was his break, and then he got Full House because of that. It's the other way around. Okay. Makes sense.
So yeah, so he was obviously the oddball one on the show, and then the Olsen twins probably became most famous from Full House as compared to everybody else. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Well, I mean, they didn't become famous for being actors or actresses, that's for sure. Oh, you know what?
As far as they were in so many things as child.
Yeah, I'm just saying. By the time they stopped, as far as being a child star, sure, it was a whole lot real quick. I do feel like I feel like Stamos, he became a household name. Not saying he was used crazily, but I mean he's I would consider him a B-list celebrity.
No, I agree with that. Was Full House where? I mean, he was kind of known before Full House, right? I mean, it wasn't like Full House probably put him on the map, but I don't think he was like on.
Well, what else is he known for? I mean, so you say that, but what else was he in? I mean, even Joey Glatt or Dave Coulier, he was I guess considered a known comedian in the '80s. So I mean, he probably was just as famous or as popular as probably Stamos in the '80s.
I mean, that's possible. Because they were all kind of known comedians back then. But yeah, I'm just looking. He was in a couple television shows He had a 12-episode span of a show called Dreams, and then a 26 episodes in You Again. So I don't know what those shows are, but they were around just beforehand.
So I mean, I feel like he was getting work, but I don't think there's no bigger role that Stamos played or probably Dave Coulier than Full House.
Yeah,
but as far as somebody putting their name on the map, maybe not so much as being like an actor, but yeah, definitely the Olsen twins would not be multi-millionaires that they are now if it wasn't for the fact that they were on that show and they were as popular as they were. And it's a good thing they stopped doing acting because, child stars don't usually make it. And I think they knew that. I actually give the Olsen twins a lot of credit, going away from acting at the right time, and they went into something that I think that they knew they could make money in, and going to New York and, they really do have like a fashion empire over there. Even though I've never seen anybody wear their stuff, but people who do spend a ton of money on it.
I mean, to be fair, how often are you walking down the street, like looking at somebody's outfit and saying, like, is that designer so and so or this and that? Like, unless it's got like an American Eagle like patched on it, do you really know what like label or brand name like people's clothing are?
I mean, that's how lost I am. I'll walk by somebody and be like, nice Izod alligator shirt. That's about as good as I go.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think you really know like what is a Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen line of clothing, even if like your wife walked in right now wearing it.
Right. Even unless you look like a hoe. I was told like that their style is a lot like if you were like a trendy looking homeless person. That's as far as like I've looked at. I'm not saying I Googled this a lot, but I did kind of look and see like what kind of what their style looks like. It's very dreary. It's very black. It's very holy. It's very disheveled, but it's popular. It almost looks grungy. And I know that somebody might be watching this who's really into fashion is probably like just like blowing a gasket right now that I said that. But that's what I see. If I saw a woman walking down the street wearing this, I feel like they should be wearing, black nail polish. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I have no idea. I don't know what their clothing line is or anything. I can't really speak on it, but I know that they're doing quite well for themselves regardless. And that's probably part of the reason they did not come back for the Fuller House, which, Netflix in its awesomeness has basically been revitalizing shows and bringing out lots of programming on their own. And while they brought back like Arrested Development, and they've kind of I think Longmire was one of the shows that was currently on that they like saved and brought to there. There was at one talk like Scrubs might go on there, but I don't think that's going to happen. The rumors started flying around about a Full House reunion or new show, and eventually we got Fuller House, which just came out actually last Friday, and it has everybody, pretty much every single character from the original Full House, with the exception of the Olsen twins. And
which I think is a surprise to nobody. I think if that was, I would have been shocked if they were able to get everybody back, and they definitely would have been the dark horse of being on the show.
The Dustin Diamond of the Saved by the Bell if they ever brought that back.
Sure, and you ever wonder if maybe that's like, you know how those types of shows, especially involving a guy like Saget. I always wondered, like, there's been so many rumors that have gone around between, like, you know, anything creepy that Saget did around the kids, or even, I mean, there were rumors that he had like an affair with Kimmy Gibbler. Like there was a lot of weird things that almost cultish, like things happen but no one talks about type of thing. And I always wondered if being on that show may have kind of turned off or like kind of warped the Olsen twins. Like they have like almost like buried memories and they don't really want to be on the show anymore. And obviously I'm making stuff up in a sense that I don't know anything, but it's definitely, there's been a lot of rumors.
Confirmed that, you know, Saget was less than, classy, I guess, you know, during the filming, and with the girls around, he is known to say and make comments and things like that are, you know, you wouldn't appreciate a middle-aged man making around your, you know, insert 3 to 15-year-old daughter. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was definitely some of that, like, they just wanted to stay away from that. And then also, to your point, they did this fashion line that kind of got out of acting. Like, they just might not want no part of coming back to do that, reliving any of that, or you know, trying to get back in the... Because they start doing that, then people are like, oh, are you going to go back to acting, this and that? Maybe they're just like, you know, we don't want to deal with any of that.
Once again, they don't need to. I mean, I feel like they got into that business, not the fashion business, but the acting business, because that was what their occupation was. They were doing that, I would assume, to make some money when they were little, or establish like a modeling career. They went away from it. So it's like, if your passion isn't acting, which clearly it's not. I don't think either one of them. I think Mary Kate did a couple things after. I think Ashley Olsen was the one that stopped doing some stuff first. I think the last thing that probably any of them did was probably 10 years ago. So clearly they don't need it. There's nothing behind. There's no end game for them to be on the show other than just for their own enjoyment. And if there's no enjoyment behind it, then, you know, it makes sense not to be on the show.
Right, absolutely. So they're not on there, but everybody else is pretty much back. You know, well, I should say it like this: for people who haven't watched it yet, or maybe you just started watching it. If you watch the first, if you want to call it a pilot or the reboot or whatever, everybody comes back for it. They've got Uncle Jesse, Aunt Becky, you know, Danny Tanner, Uncle Joey, Stephanie, DJ. Steve shows up. The Nikki and Alex, the twin boys, they're on there. I mean, they bring in all the characters. But then after that episode, it's a whole new show. I use that word "new" loosely, and we'll get into that here shortly. But then it's DJ, it's Stephanie, it's Kimmy Gibbler. And then there's special guest appearances where Aunt Becky, Uncle Joey, Uncle Jesse, or Danny will show up here and there. But it's basically a new storyline built around those characters. So let me ask you this, Kyle. What was first of all, have you watched all of it, or have you just watched some of it?
Oh, I binge watched that 2 days straight, went all the way through the end. So yeah, I've seen all of them.
Okay. So we're on the same page here, where we've seen all of it, and it's really not like. Trust me, I can binge watch like House of Cards, which is a lot to binge watch in a weekend.
Which, by the way, that's coming up in a couple days.
It is, which I cannot wait for.
I can't wait for it.
But something like this, you can binge watch in a few hours because it's anywhere from 25 to 35-minute episodes. I think they're mostly 25 to a half hour, with the exception of the pilot. So it's very easy to get through it all. But my question then to you was going to be, what did you think about the pilot reboot reunion show, what have you?
I wasn't ready for it. And by that I mean I haven't seen a show like this in a while, and I watched it with my wife, and I can see it in her eyes where it was almost as if it was too much. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It felt like an overload of that type of show. Like it was almost like the show was a little longer than the other episodes, but it almost felt like they needed to cram as much as they could in the nostalgia because everybody's on the show. So everybody had to get their lines in, get their classic one-liners in. Everybody had applause breaks. It was something I wasn't used to. I had no problem with it, but I kept on kind of looking at my wife, and it was so corny in a world of television where there's nothing corny anymore. And everything is like, what's going to happen next? I need to watch the next episode. That was never what a family like the sitcoms back were about. Like if you watched the whole season, you missed half of it. It didn't matter. The story moved on.
Yeah, it was very episodic. It wasn't serial.
Right. So it didn't. There was nothing really about that you needed to keep track of. The important things you're going to remember, and unless there's really every once in a while they'll say something important is going to happen, but they usually tease that. Whereas shows now, you have to watch every show, or else you miss a whole hour of really important content of the show. So it was one big corny joke.
I think a big reason, just to sidestep to kind of footnote what you're saying there, a big reason I think television has changed is with the evolution of DVRs and TiVo and things like that, because people can record every episode now. Like before, if you wanted to watch this episode and you weren't around, you'd hook a VCR up, try to set it to automatically record from this time to this time and things like that. It was a big pain. Here it's very easy. So people are likely to see every episode, and especially with the DVD releases for television shows, it's on Netflix, this and that. You're going to be able to watch episode 1 to episode 25 of a season. Where back then you might, to your point, you might not see episodes 7, 8, and 9 because you were out of town, or you went on vacation this week, or you went out to dinner that night, or anything like that. So
you're in Fort Myers getting a tan.
Right. You're in Fort Myers.
Whatever.
Yeah. So if you miss 3 episodes, well, all you missed was, DJ was cheating on a test, Stephanie was offered a cigarette at school, and in the other episode, Michelle was being bullied at school. But it didn't affect the overlying story at all. You just missed 3 heartwarming, stories.
You missed 3 family group hugs. That's really all you missed. And once again, that's a great point, because everybody, you needed to watch. You had to watch every show on the ones that we're watching now. There's no way that we're gonna skip an episode of House of Cards when it comes out, because there's too much at stake to missing an episode. So, and yeah, it's a different world out there. You wanted to, if you almost like back then, sitcoms were for if you felt like watching one and you knew that you can get in and sit down and enjoy it. You didn't ask any questions, which is another reason why I get really angry at critics, as I've been kind of reading some of the critics, because what they're doing? They're doing the wrong thing. A lot of these guys are grading each episode, which is like a fatal flaw in trying to review Fuller House. You don't do that for that kind of show, because once again, they're going to say episode 1 was a nice nostalgic moment. Then they go to okay, well, episode 2 is forgettable. Of course it's forgettable. It's a family sitcom. There's nothing, it's not like all of a sudden, in episode 3, Max gets lupus. It's not going to happen like that.
Right. You're not going to have the Jonathan Taylor Thomas cancer scare.
The goiter. I still remember that episode. It was a goiter. It was an
intense, they were promoting that forever, and then
yeah, they did.
I mean, the arcade and this and that, and then it turns out to be nothing. Which
they did it right when we can still now. I'm sure we haven't even seen that episode since it came out the first time, and yet that's something that's burned into our brains.
Oh yeah, it was a major episode in sitcom television during that span of time.
Absolutely. That was a tearjerker.
It really was. So, Fuller House. So, to your point, we were talking about the pilot. While you didn't seem like you appreciate, or not. I shouldn't say appreciate. You weren't ready. You didn't like all that bombardment of nostalgia. I absolutely loved that pilot. To me, it was the reunion show we never got. I thought, yes, it was totally a fan service, the whole thing from beginning.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It was everybody, like to your point, every time one of them walked in, there was a 5 to 15 second applause and screaming. They all had to say their lines. Meanwhile, they're trying to transition to the new show, so they're having reasons why, like, everybody's no longer going to be in San Francisco, which I just thought was funny. And then the only thing I found very weird is they just decided that they're going to have Danny Tanner get married to some random girl. They showed her, she might have had a line or something, and then, like, that was it for her. It just seemed very weird to just toss that in there.
Yeah, it seemed like that didn't need it. It really didn't. And I did like it that all the guys, when they moved, they're going away, but they're only a couple hours away. You know, they're in Los Angeles. I think they said that Uncle Joey was in Vegas, which is obviously it's not a very long drive away. So it's not where they live. Obviously, they're not going to see them all the time, but it definitely gives them the opportunity to be guest stars whenever the time comes.
Right, and which they ended up doing. I think all of them at some point or another showed up.
Stamos and Aunt Becky and Uncle Jesse were in a couple episodes at least, and I know Joey was in a couple, including the finale.
Right. And so, how do you think? You've watched them all now. How do you think all of them? I mean, is there anybody that you're like, well, that guy just really wasn't cutting it anymore? Like, I felt like everybody got back into character pretty well. Bob Saget maybe dialed back his corniness, I think, a little bit. And I don't know if that was personal or they just sort of thought he was maybe too cheesy back in the 90s and thought nobody's really that perfect.
Well, I think they know that it's not his show anymore. I mean, he's there to be Danny Tanner, and he did. He did enough. I don't think he needed to overdo it. You know, one person that I was. And also to your point about, people easing into these characters. I mean, most of these people didn't have characters other than the ones on Full House. So, I mean, I think it's easy for them to get back to it. And a great example of that is Andrea Barber, who plays Kimmy Gibbler.
I was going to talk about her at some point.
For somebody who literally did not act after this show, literally did not. She went and just became a teenager, went to college, had kids, got married.
Life happened.
Life happens, she becomes Spider-Man, and then all of a sudden she's asked to reprise her role, and she nails it. I mean, she does I think she's the best character on the show.
I agree, hands down, completely. She absolutely nailed it. It was like she never left. And from things I read, stuff like she had anxiety during the original Full House, and like that's why she quit acting, got a degree, all that kind of thing. And she had anxiety about coming back and reprising the role. Came back and did it, and I mean, just phenomenal.
Yeah, she really. I mean, it was almost like she's the Robert Downey Jr. of Full House. Like that was the role she was meant to play, and she does a great job of it. She's a mother. As a kid, she's got her whole weird thing with her estranged husband. And
one thing that just bothered me, and I don't want to spoil too much of the.
Well, I mean, there's not much to spoil. I mean, it's all over the actual show, so it's not like anything crazy. I'm okay with Fernando, but I feel like there's no one out there that I feel like it's one of those almost stereotypical characters that. I mean, it makes sense that they're together because they're both weird, but it's one of those things where it's tough to sell that stereotypical, to me, like flamboyant, Spanish, almost like matador kind of guy that he is. He does play, and he has his moments and he means well. But
I think he was funny. I thought he played a good character. But what I didn't like was they're going through this divorce because it sounded like he did nothing but cheat on her the whole time that they were married, and then they kind of work things out as it goes on, and like that's sort of like they're trying to respark the thing. Like, I don't know. That just makes Kimmy look like, man, she just got cheated on like 1,000 times. Then like she starts to take him back. He's cheating on her again, and then she like still like goes to take him back. Like I just didn't like the way they wrote that love interest between the two of them going back and forth.
And also, it almost kind of makes it seem like that's funny. Like, yeah. So I get where that can be a little cringeworthy. Where I'm sure that in the end you can tell that they really do have, at the very least, very real infatuation, physical feelings for each other, and they have a kid. So that, I mean, like a young, impressionable kid that they don't want to, be arguing in front of her and trying to put on like the happy family, face when she's around. But yeah, it's something, once again, I feel like it's hard to sell in real life that if somebody, I feel like in real life, if you have a husband or, anyone in your life that is that unfaithful and kind of plays it off as, I make mistakes, like, how do you go back to that? Like, how do you have that kind of respect for yourself? And then once again, that's in us, like, being serious about fake characters, but I just look at it as like, can I insert myself into this kind of position? Like, no, it's a weird thing to see in real life.
And to be fair to the show in some aspect, DJ, even up to the last episodes, tells Kimmy she hates him. So, I didn't understand that, but I don't know.
Well, her DJ's is, I think, even weirder. Just because, like, to her situation, I think they on purpose made that into like a funny, corny, family sitcom romance where it's not supposed to be real.
Right, and let's talk about DJ for a little bit. So the overall storyline, and for people who don't know or just kind of heard it, it's very similar to the original Full House, except now it's DJ. She has 3 boys, where before her dad had 3 girls, but she has 3 boys. Her husband was a firefighter that died in a fire, it sounds like, so she is widowed. And long story short, she ends up. Danny just sort of gives her this house in San Francisco, which, how much money do you think that house would be worth in today's market?
I looked it up. It's over $4 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's just huge. And that's why he's like, I'm going to take it off the market. And they even do make a joke. Somebody says something like, you do realize how much money this place is worth now. But so she ends up staying there, and you have to, if they don't specify when, maybe they do in the first episode, I don't remember. Her husband died, what, like 6 months prior to the... No,
I don't think so, because I feel like Max makes some points that, well, you know what, like he said he never got that ride on the fire engine, and I feel like him being like probably 5 or 6 or however old he is, I feel like he would have gotten that in the last 6 years. I feel like I know obviously he had been alive enough to help conceive Tommy.
The Tommy, right? But you gotta assume Tommy's at best a year old.
I would say at best a year.
I don't think he's that, but so
we'll say let's say within the last 12 months the husband's been dead.
Right. And you got Steve, who, don't get me wrong, I love Steve, especially, Mr. Aladdin, all that. Zany character, this, that. He comes in the pilot and, like, hits on DJ. He's like, yeah, so I hear you're, like, single. Pretty much. I'm like, dude, Steve, like, her husband just died. Like, take a couple steps back, bro.
Well, it's not even just that. Like, on top of that, like, you just don't, like, go to a house and be like, hey, man, hey, DJ, it's been a long time. Hey, remember that chemistry we had? Man, hey, I'm single. Like, dude, dial it down a bit, man. Like, I mean, we're rooting for you, probably. But seriously, calm it down. By the way, I really do appreciate that the dog's name is Comet Junior Junior. I thought that was funny in my own way.
Yeah. I mean, they really did a lot of throwbacks, and I gotta admit, when it first started and I heard that first applause, it threw me off because I'm not used to. I know like Big Bang Theory does laugh tracks and stuff, but like shows just don't do those type of laugh tracks and like
live studio audiences. They don't really do that
kind of stuff. And it was just, you hear that and it was like took me back for a minute.
Yeah, it's it brings back what I miss. Do you ever watch like the end of like Fresh Prince or the end of like Home Improvement where they have like the outtakes where they mess up and stuff, and
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
that's some of the funnier moments. I used to love watching the end of those just because like how much they mess up. Especially, I think the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air has some of the greatest outtakes ever. That like I always enjoyed, like watching like Carlton mess up a line and then just go off on a tangent for like 30 seconds. So I was actually kind of hoping that one of the things on Netflix would have been that, because I think they are doing still a studio audience. I don't think it's just a laugh track. I think it was literally a studio audience.
It might be, but I'm sure they just dubbed that over one way or another anyhow.
Yeah, but there's a difference between like How I Met Your Mother, who that's a laugh track. I mean, that's they do that where they have somebody, they have people watch the show when it's already done, and then they take the laughs from there. So this seemed more organic. Like maybe it was a laugh track, but it did seem like this could have potentially been because they have to pause for it. So either they have to hear the audience, cheering in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So the show follows a similar premise. DJ realizes she can't take care of these kids on her own, and Stephanie says, I'm gonna move in and help you, just like, pretty much how Jesse and Joey moved in with Danny to help raise the girls. And Stephanie sort of takes on the role that Jesse had, because she's like this DJ traveling around the world, living up this like lifestyle. So she sort of has the music and the party boy mentality. So she moves in, and then Kimmy Gibbler, which moves in as well as like the third woman to be in that, and sort of the Joey role, I guess, in her own way, where she's really just Kimmy. Do you think the original plan, if the Olsen twins signed on, do you think they take over Kimmy and Kimmy just becomes like a reoccurring side character, sort of like how Steve was?
I really think that if the Olsen twins, or one of the two, decided to be in the entire second season, which I like. I think we're praying for a miracle here.
I'm not even saying second season. I'm saying if they originally said way back when, like,
that they're going to do it. It would be a strange thing, because I feel like I think the pieces fit together the way they were supposed to, with like the literal sibling and the best friend moving in, just like from Rego from the first Full House. I feel like if Michelle was on the show, I don't know where they would go. I guess if you're trying to have all these parallels, which it's uncanny how many there are, just like how the similarities are, just kind of like flip the same side of the other side of the same coin. I don't know what. I actually would rather ask you that first, and then see how and give a better opinion. Because really, unless you have something I don't about what Michelle would be on the show.
I don't. My thought is that she would have been the thought for the original. If they originally asked everybody, they said yes, and they're like, all right, we're gonna put Michelle in that role. Kimmy will be a special guest. I think that's where they would have wanted it, but I don't think the Olsen twins were ever gonna. I think if the Olsen twins even signed on, they would have been like, hey, we'll do a reunion episode and that's it. So at best, they would have probably been brought in for that first episode anyway.
I feel like they would have been recurring if they were going to come on and be totally about it. If they said, hey, we will do episodes, I think that they would still fall into the recurring character role, like Uncle Jesse and Uncle Joey and Danny Tanner. I think they wouldn't have stayed in the house anyways, even if they were agreeing to be on the show. Yeah. I think they would have visited.
So they follow a very similar formula, and honestly, some of the storylines are so similar to the old storylines. In case in point, literally the next episode after the pilot is they have to move the two boys into a bedroom together, which was a storyline way back when they moved Stephanie and DJ into a room together. So did you appreciate the throwbacks? Because they did this, a handful of the episodes were like that, where they followed similar concepts. Did you appreciate the shout-outs to the past? Or did you think like they could be more original and you didn't like that direction?
I'm not in a position to judge that. It was good. I liked what they did with it because it created dialogue with, especially with Stephanie, because a lot of those shows too, or a lot of those stories that they decided to, use the same ones. It gave more compelling, I guess, lines for the women, because they were able to go back and say, hey, I remember when we had to do that. And also it gives opportunity for them to have flashbacks of when it actually did happen. Just like they had the flashback with her husband when Stephanie got married. They were that episode.
That flashback. I thought that was pretty cool.
So it was done right. It's the right show to do that kind of stuff with. Is that it's not only is it a new show, it's just as much a nod and appreciation to the original.
Right. I agree. And as we're sort of wind things down here, I got two questions I'll ask you. Favorite thing about Fuller House, least favorite thing about Fuller House, and then I'll do mine.
My favorite thing about Full House was, you know what? I like that. Honestly, my least favorite, and once again, you're going to think this is weird. My least favorite episode was the pilot. And then I eased into the show because I was more excited about seeing the new show. I understand the necessity and the salute of the show and making like a reunion show, but I knew that's not what the show's going to be about. So I was almost like impatient. I felt like that first episode was, all right, yeah, I get it. Good job with this, but let's go. Yeah, let's get the show started. And I was very, very, very surprised that after the first episode, and even my wife had mentioned that it felt like overload, like it was just way too corny. I'm like, well, that is Full House. Like you can't. It's really hard. They're not going to just bring the show back and be like, hey, we're just going to do this new age Fuller House. No, they're going to go to what worked.
Right.
And it's working.
They should. People aren't watching it to see a brand new show. They're watching it to see what they loved about it back in the day. If that's cheesy, then so be it.
Yeah, and that's why I got so annoyed by looking at critics, and they're shitting all over the show because they're trying to think of this as like a modern family with some corniness to it. And I'm like, that's not what this is. Like, you got to back off that and think that this is some 2016 sitcom. Like, if you're thinking that, then go watch Blackish or go watch Modern Family or The Middle or something like that. That there's plenty of shows like that. So I liked my favorite thing about, or listen, one of the things I liked was that my least favorite episode was the first, and it got better. Because I think what a lot of people thought, a lot of other people had felt was the first one was really good, and then it was just like, oh, so now I got to actually watch and go with the story. I actually really liked the story. I thought it was well written. I thought it did just enough to be the right amount of balance between like the corniness and really bringing the focus on what really the story is about with the new kids and, the women. And my other favorite thing, and I don't care who is going to judge me about this, but oh my God, Jodie Sweetin. Oh my God.
Yes, they had a definitely character of themselves at times.
Those puppies are almost as distracting as Max's character. Like, I like Max, and Max is supposed to be like the young Stephanie, where kind of like the sweetheart who was supposed to kind of.
I took him as more of even a Michelle in the later years, because Michelle was sort of that.
But once again, that took over when she was young enough to talk. But the first couple seasons of Full House, I mean, Stephanie was definitely eccentric, loud, annoying. The annoying little sister to like, the older sister who's trying to be like the more responsible or the cooler teen, like almost preteen. So Max to me was my least favorite guy on the show, but at the same time that's to say that I actually liked him. Jackson, I feel like Jackson was the most like lukewarm kind of neutral guy. Like I think he played the stereotypical trying to find his coolness 13-year-old.
Right. Yep.
But I feel like Max needed to dial it down. Like, I felt like there were points where, like, man, Max needs to dial it down a little bit, or someone needs to take the pixie sticks away from that kid.
Yeah, absolutely. As for me, my least favorite is I thought there was some discontinuity in certain storylines. Like I said, the husband/ex-husband with Kimmy. I thought there was a little back and forth there where it wasn't always perfect. I felt there was a similar thing with like Kimmy's daughter and Jackson, the oldest son of DJ's. Like at first they hated each other, wanted no part of each other. Then that was like gone after like an episode, and then they were buddies from there on out. I just thought they kind of took storylines, used them at the beginning, and then just sort of changed them when they wanted to change them. So there's little things like that. I guess it's a little nitpicking, but
I wonder if they're going to use those two for like they're both of the same age, and I wonder if like if season 2, because I mean it's gonna be two 14-year-olds that aren't related living under the same roof. I'm very curious if they're going to play the like maybe like a little bit of like a crush or like their first kiss type of thing.
I thought for sure it was going to happen by the end of this season. The way where I'm like, oh, they hate each other at the beginning. Like, oh yeah, they're definitely going to like one's going to fall for the other. They're eventually going to like fall for each other. And they didn't go that way at all, so maybe they won't. But I
feel like that need to be established real early to make it a good story. And I feel like by like the 4th episode, like they seemed like they were just kind of like chums. Like, okay, I feel like that's not going to happen at least on this season.
Right. Yeah. So that was sort of my least favorite thing. I thought there's some bouncing around with stories. Like I said, my favorite thing. I love the reunion show. I was eating in all the fan service, and whether it was overload or not, I don't care. I love me some Full House. I love me every one of them saying their catchphrases. I think Aunt Becky was looking fantastic. Stephanie looked great.
She did not age.
Great. No, she did not. And DJ, I'm just going to say this, which will actually tie into next week's podcast slightly. There's an episode with wrestling where DJ gets into the ring and like wrestles. That is actually Candace Cameron. She filmed that her stunt double did not want to do it. She filmed all that, including the like head scissors takedown.
Good for her, man.
Yeah, it's very impressive work by Candace.
I mean, the one thing you always kind of do when you see like scenes like that is try to look at the face and see if like that actually is Candace Cameron. You know, like or like they do things where they hide the face, but no, you can see it like plain as day. That's definitely her.
Yeah. So kudos to her, Candace Cameron, for doing that and wrestling, which, like I said, as we kind of end things here, next week's podcast, as we hit the road to WrestleMania, we're going to talk some wrestling. And I know some people out there might not be the biggest wrestling fans. I ask this, if nothing more, listen next week, and from there decide whether you want to listen to the other topics of wrestling we'll be discussing. But give us 1 week. Unfortunately, Haddix is going to be back next week, so that could be enough.
Our condolences ahead of time.
Yeah, so wrestling podcast next week. Don't forget, subscribe on iTunes. Leave us that 5-star rating. Go tweet at us. Comment. Tell us what you thought about Fuller House. What you thought about Full House. Best memories. Maybe we'll retweet some of those out there. But yeah, so we'll see you guys next week from the home of Full House to the home of the Drew Carey Show, because that's about all that was recorded out here. I'm Josh Kiser. He's Kyle Hogan. We'll see you guys next week.
Cleveland rocks.